How would you like to improve the relationships with those that matter most to you? That's kind of a rhetorical question because I would imagine that all of us want to improve, go deeper, love more with those people that matter most to us. And in my conversations with people, a lot of times I'll ask them, hey, what's most important to you? What matters most to you in life? And I'll tell you what, very rarely, if ever, anybody says, oh, it's my job. My job matters most, or my career matters most, or my hobby matters most. You know the answer. It always comes back to people. It comes back to relationships. It comes back to your spouse or your loved one, your kids, your mother-in-law. Well, maybe not. No. Mary, I didn't mean that. I'm just kidding. I love my mother-in-law. But it's people. I'm just having fun. It's people that matter most to us. And so the question is how do we level up? How do we get better at relationships, at interacting, at connecting with those that matter most to us? And so I'm just going to share three things with you, three things that I've found true of my life that have really helped me go deeper in my relationships. It helps me feel more joy, more emotion in my relationships. And so number one is this: if you want to improve the relationships with those that matter most to you, number one, you got to increase your vulnerability. You have to increase you being vulnerable with those that you love. I was sitting out on my front porch not too long ago. My wife was there, and one of our mentors was there. And this woman who we care about very deeply, and she loves our family, and she came over from Orlando, and she was sitting on the front porch, and we were just talking. And she said, Jason, I've watched you in social situations. She says, you ask really good questions to people. And I thanked her, but I knew there was more. And she says, I think that you asking good questions is actually a defense mechanism that you have. It's actually kind of like your safe zone, and it prevents you from having to be vulnerable. And she just asked me, are you afraid to be vulnerable? And you know what? It caught me so off guard, but she was right. I'm curious by nature, so I do ask a lot of questions. And those of you who know me well and you've interacted with me, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. But what this woman pointed out in my life was absolutely true. Most of my life, somewhere in there, I learned to put up a wall when I interact with people. And so subconsciously, if I can keep you answering my questions, you can't ask me any questions back. And I was kind of like a Svengali. You would ask me a question, but I would flip it and turn it right back on you. And therefore, I'm safe, I'm comfortable, I don't have to be vulnerable. But it for years prevented me from being known to other people. And it prevented me from really getting to know, because when I lack vulnerability, there's a wall up, and that wall may be safe for me. It may feel comfortable, it may feel safe, but guess what? It also prevents me, any wall prevents me from getting to know you, getting to know the other person, and vice versa. And so that lack of vulnerability prevents connection. And if you and I are going to level up our interactions with other people, our relationships with other people, we've got to allow ourselves, we've got to give ourselves permission to be more vulnerable. And so let me ask you this: on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself right now in your vulnerability? 1 is you're like Fort Knox. You're not letting anybody in. And maybe you've had some things happen in your life that you have reason for that. And so, but here's what you have to realize is that your relationships are only going to go as far or as deep or as felt as you're able to begin to lower down that wall. So number 1, you're like Fort Knox. 10, you're an open book. Your emotions are on your sleeve. Everybody knows, how you're feeling, and you have no issue interacting your real, authentic, genuine self. Where are you? And what could you do today to start increasing your vulnerability, to begin to build those deeper relationships? All right, so number one, we've got to increase our vulnerability if we're going to get closer and deeper connected with those that we love the most, those that matter most in our lives. And number two, I would say this: level up your presence. Like, be present. Where you are, be all there. I know that sounds so simple. You've probably heard that before, yet how many times? And I don't have my phone on me, but I can hold that. That's the obvious one, right? Is these gadgets, our cell phones. They go everywhere with us. As a matter of fact, I was eating breakfast with my family this past weekend, and we noticed another family. They had a big spread on the table. They were all there, and as I glanced over at them, it was crazy. All of them were here on their phones. And again, I know that's an obvious one, and please, I'm not being judgmental. As a matter of fact, I'll share with you what happens in those moments when I notice that. I'm not being judgmental, I'm not being critical. It actually, I've turned it into a positive when I see that, and here's what I want to pass on to you, is I use that as a trigger in my life now. It's a positive trigger, that when I see other people together, they're supposed to be interacting, but they're doing this instead, it's just a positive trigger for my life. I ask myself, how can I be more present in this moment? And it allows me and reminds me to, okay, set my phone aside, set these distracting thoughts aside. How can I be fully present in this moment with the person that matters most to me, which is the person that I'm with, whoever that might be. Could be one of my kids, could be my wife, family member, a friend. I want to be fully present. And if you and I are going to feel deeply connected with our relationships, we've got to be fully present. You know, and I know that the phones, of course, are the obvious ones. Maybe some of the less obvious ones for being fully present might be you're engaged in a conversation, and if you're a guy, you can probably relate to this. Somebody's sharing a problem. Maybe it's a loved one sharing a problem, something that happened, and right away, what do we do? What do we do as guys? We go into fix-it mode, right? We're Mr. Fix-It. Hey, let me fix this problem. Let me tell you, hey, here's 3 ways you can fix that in 2 ways, and you ought to do this. That's not what's needed. Most likely that's not what's needed, but as guys, we're like, okay, practically, how can I fix this problem? And when we're in problem-solving mode, we miss the emotion. We miss the intent of the conversation. Going into problem-solving mode 9 times out of 10 pulls us out of being fully present, because the problem-solving is not what's needed most in the moment. Is, do I understand what's being said? Do I really hear this person? And what I mean by that is, do I hear the emotion behind what's being said? And the emotion and the tonality of what's being said lets me know that there's more to what's said than what's really being said right now, what's behind that. And so I would just encourage you, if you're, and I've had to learn to come out of this problem-solving mode, just to settle into the conversation and to be fully present and listen to the emotion and respond to that. And then lastly, I would say this, that would help us be fully present and more present in these conversations, is somebody sharing a situation that has just happened to them. Maybe they're bummed and you're listening to the emotion of it. Maybe they're bummed out, maybe they're joyful. And sometimes we could be very quick to go, oh yeah. Well, listen to what happened to me. Well, I had a similar experience. And we hijack the conversation, and you might have done this. Don't be hard on yourself. I've done it. We've all done it. We hijack the conversation, and all of a sudden it's about our situation, what happened to us yesterday or a week ago, and we missed being fully present in the moment because we went off on our own situation. Here's my encouragement. Hey, settle in to the conversation. Relax. Don't worry about, hey, what am I going to say next? How am I going to solve this problem? What about my situation? And really listen. to what that other person's saying, the emotionality, the tonality. I don't even know if emotionality is a word, but emotion, the tonality, and the feeling behind that so that we can really respond in that moment. So number one, we got to be more vulnerable. Increase our vulnerability. We got to level up our presence, eliminate those distractions. And lastly, I would say this. This was the hardest one for me. To love yourself. To love yourself. If we're going to feel more deeply connected to those that matter most to us, we've got to love ourselves. And there's an old teaching. I'm a person of faith. You may not be, that's okay. There's no judgment here. Stay with me though, because this old truth, this old teaching, regardless of your background or beliefs, I promise you, applies to your life. And that is, it's a quote by Jesus, and he said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. I go, well, who's my neighbor? You mean the guy that lives right next door to me? Well, yes, but not only that. Your neighbor is defined as anybody who might come across your path today. Hey, you might be in the grocery store and people cross your path, they're your neighbor. You might be at work. You might be walking in your neighborhood. Anybody that crosses your path today, guess what? You get to impact their lives, or at least there's a potential there. They're your neighbor. You have an opportunity to spread love, joy, empathy, care, concern to anybody that crosses your path. And what Jesus said there is love your neighbor, but the key is as you love yourself. And what I found is this: if I'm having a hard time loving myself, I'm going to have a hard time really loving others. And I'll tell you what, for years, I was very judgmental on myself. I was very critical of myself, very hard on myself. Perhaps you can relate to that. Well, when I'm judgmental and critical and hard on myself, guess what that carries over to? My neighbor, you. And people that come across my path. If I'm critical of myself, I'm just going to be critical of that guy or that gal over there. And that all I'm saying is that there's a higher way to live. There's a better road to take. And so we've got to, I want to give you permission to extend grace to yourself, to be kind to yourself, to be loving to yourself, forgive yourself. So many times it's easier to forgive the other person than it is to forgive ourselves. But if we don't forgive ourselves, have grace with ourselves, be kind to ourselves, guess what? That wall is there. It prevents us from fully loving other people. And so if we're going to have that aspiration to be deeply connected and raise the bar, raise the level of connectedness with those that we love the most, we've got to love ourselves, and you've got to love yourself as well. So let me ask you this. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? Where are you right now with loving yourself? 1 is you're like I used to be. You're judgmental and critical and harsh with yourself. And I want to tell you, there's a better way. There's more joy for you. There's more grace for you. There's more kindness for you if you would allow yourself the gift of those things. I just want to give you permission to forgive yourself, to be easier on yourself, to enjoy life more perhaps than you are right now. So maybe you're 1, 2, or 3, or maybe you're a 10, and it's not an issue. Congratulations, and I want to champion you in that, to keep that going in your life. So wherever you are on a scale of 1 to 10, let me ask you this. What could you do today to level up just a little bit more? To love yourself a little bit more maybe self-care? Is there something that you can do today to increase that in your life? And so take all 3 of these. Take all 3 of these. Increasing your vulnerability on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? Take leveling up your presence, being fully present in the moment on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you with that? and loving yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you with that? And what could you do today to just go one notch higher on that? Begin to work on that. I hope that helps you, my friend. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, keep that desire, hustle, focused to keep climbing higher in life.